It could provide false information or something.
Some guys got into the position where they would actually operate so that dealing with the information is going from, I was just fixing stuff.
The most I could actually ever do is just get stuff on a plane that isn't supposed to be there, but even then, it's like, that's like a $10,000 fine plus.
Dang.
It's not worth it.
No.
Well, guys, welcome to Maple Syrup episode number 252. I have a cup of coffee from Monica's in a cup that says 2001 Big Ten champions, Illinois, Fighting Illini. I bought this in a Champaign, Illinois thrift store for $3. And today's topic is very, very heavy. So I thought we'd start on a light note with a song. Do you guys know the Folgers theme song?
Folgers has a theme song?
Yeah. The best part of waking up is Folgers in your cup. Like it's really into it. Like it's like, dude, it's just coffee, man. And he's like, the best part of all of existence. Like it's like that. It's like, it's too much. It's coffee, it's good. Please calm down. Okay.
Good.
That's all you have to do. It's not necessary to get that excited. Okay, today's topic, maple syrup number, I believe it's 252, Catholicism and disasters, I think number 18. The atomic bombs at Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and my friends, welcome. It's so good to see all of you. You're my favorite people, truly. It's so great to be with you. And everyone watching online later, hello. We're just gonna get right to it. The reason I did the Folgers thing beforehand is let's get all the nonsense out of the way. This is a very serious, somber lecture. Without further ado, after 6 days, Jesus took Peter, James, and John, his brother, and led them up a high mountain by themselves. And he was transfigured before them. His face shone like the sun, and his clothes became white as light. I think this is from the Gospel of St. Matthew. There's perhaps in a different translation or a different gospel, as no fuller on earth could bleach them. I love that saying. What is this? What is this Bible passage?
Transfiguration.
Exactly. What is anyone know what the connection is? Today's the bright light, the dropping of the first atomic bomb on August 6th, 1945 happens on the feast of the Transfiguration. It did.
Wow.
Is there a connection? In God's complete and total providence, C.S. Lewis, I think, famously once said, either you believe everything is a coincidence or nothing. We're going to talk about some really hopeful stuff. You know how a lot of the reaction part of Catholicism and disasters at times has been proximate? Like, here's this guy, he was a WASP, but he did this really good Catholic thing. Today, we're just getting like straight Catholic stuff. So settle in, here we go. The Jesuits said, quote, "We believed that we survived because we were living the message of Fatima. We lived and prayed the rosary daily in that house." What is that in reference to? We're going to have to find out. But on August 6th and 9th, 1945, respectively, Hiroshima 1st, Nagasaki 2nd, the US, of course, detonates the only 2 atomic bombs ever over a civilian population in an act of war. The bombs kill between 129 and 226,000 people, most of whom are civilians. Once more, we believed that we survived because we were living the message of Fatima. We lived and prayed the rosary daily in that house. After 6 days, Jesus took Peter, James, and John, his brother, and led them up a high mountain by themselves. And he was transfigured before them. His face shone like the sun, and his clothes became as white as light, as white as no fuller on earth could bleach them. In Hiroshima, it's between 70 and 126,000 civilians killed, 7 to 20,000 soldiers, and 12 Allied prisoners of war. The Hiroshima bomb is first, August 6th, Little Boy, as the bomb was known. Fat Man is dropped on Nagasaki 3 days later, August 9th, 60 to 80,000 killed, 150 plus soldiers. In both bombings, Hiroshima and Nagasaki, there are numerous Allied prisoners of war. who are killed as well. Remember, the total is 129 to 226,000 people, many of them killed, as you said, in this bright light sun, this unbelievable flash of, at the time, what was that, right? The people on the ground certainly, would you not be surprised? I mean, this is literally we talk about like unique events and things that we don't see coming. This certainly is that all the way. All right. Does anyone know? Well, first, let's start with some brief war stuff before I go into the real background. What is happening in the war at this time? August 6th, August 9th, 1945. How is World War II going?
Well, VE Day has been declared a while ago.
Indeed.
They're trying to get it, I don't know when. Anyway, we're starting to in the Pacific, but who knows how long it's gonna go on.
Good. So quick, can I do this in like a minute? I hope, but excellent. That is the operative thing. VE Day, the Victory in Europe Day, is May 8th, 1945. I think Adolf Hitler had shot himself in his bunker on May 1st already. Nazi Germany, thankfully, has been defeated. The European theater is over. What does the European theater look like? Remember, we get involved, and of course, this is going to circle back to where these events take place, the Pacific Theater. We get involved December 7th, 1941, the day that will live in infamy, the attacks on Pearl Harbor. The European theater, there's really kind of 3 dates I want you to know. Operation Torch, which is 1942, which is Allied incursion in North Africa. From Torch, the Allies do something called Husky, Operation Husky, 1943. They skip, hop, and jump across the Mediterranean into Italy, Mussolini falls. And then, of course, the famous D-Day landings of June 6th, 1944 in Normandy. The last German offensive in the Second World War is the Battle of the Bulge, as you move into early 1945, winter 44, early 1945. But as you correctly said, by May, the Allies, the Americans especially, am I a proud American? Absolutely. But I'm not saying this out of American pride. The Americans do a great job, this greatest generation. Omaha Beach, this bravery, opening up the Western Front. They're done. What is happening in the Eastern Theater? Not the Pacific, the Eastern Theater. Well, you've had like the Siege of Leningrad, 900 days, people resorting to cannibalism, eating leather, a kind of old style siege like you see in like the Persian Empire in 500 BC. The Germans surround the city. The Germans had, in 1941, that same year of Pearl Harbor, Hitler had stabbed Stalin in the back, something called Operation Barbarossa, June 22nd, 1941. Stalin had been his ally, the Soviets and the Germans, before they rip apart Poland in September of 1939, sign a non-aggression pact, the Molotov-Ribbentrop Treaty. And Hitler just is like, he wants something called Lebensraum, living space. Hitler rightfully gets all of the kind of anger and historical condemnation for his anti-Semitic policies. But that wasn't the only thing the Nazis were about. They also wanted this Lebensraum. They considered the Slavs, all Eastern Europeans, Untermenschen, like subhuman. You just clear them out. Just get these guys out of here. You're pretty safe to say the Nazis kind of had this superiority complex towards all people, and certainly towards the Russians as well. Stalin, yeah, you'll never hear me saying anything good about Joseph Stalin. May God have mercy on him. Stalin, terrible military commander, is so stupid that it's one thing to say like, well, Hitler's not going to backstab me, but the Russians don't even get the planes off the ground. What a joke, the Soviets. The Germans invade and they're just like burning planes on the ground. Imagine how unprepared you could be. Like the Germans attack, march east into the Soviet Union, and the Soviets are like, what? What happened? And the plane, they can't even get the planes off the ground. But Hitler's invasion of the Soviet Union, the same thing happens to him that happened to Napoleon in 1812. The Russian winter kicks his butt. And there's horrible battles. The Battle of Stalingrad, 1942 to 43, 2 to 3 million casualties, block-to-block fighting. Leningrad, again, this long siege, which is today known as, and traditionally known as St. Petersburg. Though at the Battle of Kursk in the Eastern Theater, the Nazis have been defeated there as well. So we're about to get to Hiroshima and Nagasaki. We're almost done with the war timeline. By August 1945, when these bombs are dropped, VE Day has happened. The Allies have won in the West. The Nazis have lost in the East as well. because of the conditions and war of attrition, but they've lost nonetheless. And what has happened in the Pacific theater? You rightfully mentioned Midway. The Japanese, despite so much atrocities and brutality and human rights violations, especially towards the Chinese, leading up to Pearl Harbor, were a good military fighting force. They had taken over the larger Pacific Rim, so to speak. The Battle of Midway is a huge turning point in 1942. At that point, the Americans start making serious incursions in the Pacific theater and pushing back the Japanese war machine. So this leads us to Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and the question is this. We know, has anyone seen Oppenheimer, the movie? Okay, I have not yet. I heard it was good. Do you guys recommend it? What are your thoughts? No, yes?
I didn't see it.
It's well done. There's some things that I don't think were necessary or could have been implied without the way that they did it. Mostly in his, I guess, putting him as a womanizer. I think they could have done that less
Sure.
less grossly.
Yeah,
personally.
there's always that just appeal to like, some people will come to the movie for this. Yeah, kind of stuff. Right, I agree
So,
with you.
But not like artistically, it was really well done, and it was well explained. Some people complain that it was hard to follow, like where they were, like in the timeline. I didn't really come across that, even with minimal background knowledge. It
Got it.
seems pretty straightforward as to when they were talking about to me, but I thought it was well done.
Got it, awesome. Well, fantastic. I'll have to check it out, especially, I'm not saying that you're giving it a 5-star recommendation. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but that's great. That sounds good enough to me. I have not seen it, but everyone knows the Manhattan Project, the top secrecy of it. In fact, when Harry Truman takes over as president, he doesn't even know that it's going on. Talk about top secret. When FDR was president, Truman, I guess that says everything you need to know about vice president, But the Manhattan Project's going on. They've done the Trinity test. I believe the Trinity test, talk about weird Catholic coincidences. Hiroshima is the Feast of the Transfiguration. The Trinity test, I believe, is July 16th, 1945, the Feast of Our Lady of Mount Carmel. And if you're like, well, the Catholic calendar has feasts every day, fine. These are like major feasts. This isn't like the feast of some guy named Joe in 11th century Italy, which I hope all of us can become that. He's a saint, he's in heaven, praise God. I'm just saying, these are major feasts. Our Lady of Mount Carmel, the Transfiguration, these are major, major feast days. All right. The question is, with everything covered, what do we do with the Japanese? The Americans are saying they are fierce fighters. They seem to have this ethical code which makes them good fighters. I don't care if I die at all. I'll die for the emperor. Do we do a land invasion? That might cost 6 billion lives. And of course, I'm exaggerating, but you get my point. Are the Japanese literally going to fight till everyone is dead on the island? Some Americans thinking maybe, yeah. And how many Americans will die in that process as well? So that leads to this decision to do the bombs. Done with the World War II timeline, just understand those people, the Axis powers, they're done at this point. VE Day has happened. The Soviets have defeated the Russians in the Eastern Theater. The Soviets have defeated the Germans, in the Eastern Theater. And Japan is on its last legs as well. It has been ever since Midway, 1942. Let's do some background. Marie, by the way, I didn't thank you in the email. Thank you for sending me about the Franciscans. We're going to talk about them today. The email you sent yesterday. Thank you. And thank you for the song too. So VE Day, okay, we're done with that. What is the most Catholic Japanese city? It's Nagasaki. There are some conspiratorial people who are like, see, these WASP guys bombed Nagasaki because they also hate Catholics. I don't know. I'm up for a conspiracy all the time. I don't know if that's true. Again, Jesus Christ is the way, the truth, and the life. We should always be about the truth. If it's convenient or not. I'm not going to say that, oh, yeah, see, I don't know. I don't know if that's true. Nagasaki certainly is the Catholic city. I'm going to give you some background on Nagasaki. 2 conspiratorial points. People dropped the bomb on Nagasaki because they want to get rid of these stupid papists. In addition to the Japanese, that's the one I just mentioned. There's also the one that we drop it not to end the war, but to intimidate Stalin. Know that kind of conspiracy. A lot of people say the Americans don't drop the bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki because they need to do it. They don't. There's other ways to do it. They want to show Stalin. It's an anachronism to say the Cold War. We don't know what we're going to call it, but something's coming. We're going to have some rivalry. Alexis de Tocqueville, in his works, especially Democracy in America, 1832, predicted 100 years before Russia and the US is going to be the future rivalry. They have the most people, the most land. So a lot of people say the Americans know it's that day of reckoning is coming, us versus the Russians, the Soviets at that time. Let's drop these bombs to intimidate Stalin.
Wasn't Patton making a lot of noise against that?
Patton says, yeah, Patton wants to go fight the Soviets immediately. Some people say he's assassinated. Patton, if you don't know, General George Patton is the American general. If you like him, oh man, he's so based, he's so old school. If you don't like him, oh, he's so mean, you know, whatever. Like he apparently slapped a soldier. To me, like whatever, dude. And then the guy got yelled at by his football coach. He's just a general. Come on.
George C. the movie with George C. Scott. It was a great movie. Yeah.
Really?
It was good.
George Scott is an actor who plays Patton.
George C. Scott, yeah.
Okay.
The movie's called Patton.
Okay, awesome. No, I've never seen it.
Fantastic.
I gotta watch Patton and I gotta watch Oppenheimer. I did watch Barbie the other day.
How was it?
It was great.
Was it?
I thought it was awesome. Yeah. Really? I liked it a lot. Yeah. So I don't want, again, this is such, I do want, that's actually a good like intermission kind of point. Just a quick note. No, being very serious, I liked it. There's like, I think it's true. Credit to Greta Gerwig. I think she's the director. The movie can be read as a feminist screed against men and also a very conservative movie. It can be. And that's why I thought that was great art. It's very ambiguous in a good way. Greta Gerwig could be, and I don't think she's commented either way, which is like fist bump to her. You know, no comment, you say what you want. It can be read as like, of course, men are bad, men are awful. The Ken character, obviously Ken and Barbie, right? I don't have to explain Ken in the Barbie universe. But Ken in the movie starts this patriarchy thing and whatever. So it can be explained as like, look, all this toxic masculinity, it's so bad, feminism. It can also be explained as like, look how screwed up our culture is, that it has created this idea of toxic masculinity, this antagonism between men and women. Men and women actually need to get back to a more complementary, like, you know, we're partners, not enemies. I thought it was, yeah, it was really good. And the songs were fun. Yeah. And Margot Robbie crushing, Ryan Gosling crushing. Everyone was like that Ryan Gosling stole the show. And I'm like, Margot Robbie actually looks like Barbie. Like actually, like in real life. It wasn't like an actress. She looks like Barbie actually came to life. It was great. Anyways, back to serious stuff, guys. If there is a connection to Japan,
I thought Barbie was physically impossible.
no, not physically impossible. She made it possible.
Yeah.
It was Margot Robbie. There was a controversy. And again, getting back to the very serious stuff, there was a controversy, you know, Barbenheimer or whatever, like Barbie and Oppenheimer playing together, where in Japan, they were like, it had an ad for Barbie being engulfed in like a nuke. And the Japanese people were like, this is offensive. Like, I don't think the Japanese, I think, are pretty base. They're not like, oh, our feelings are hurt. They're just like, hey, we had actual bombs dropped on us. Like, please don't like advertise Barbie as being blown up by nukes. Haha, like it's that actually happened here, you know, kind of thing. Yeah. So anyways, okay. Nagasaki, yes. All facts, guys. We've already talked about World War II, where we are in August of 45, and we opened up, Marie, the only thing you missed was with noting that this happens on the Feast of the Transfiguration, the bombing of Hiroshima, August 6th. Portuguese Nagasaki, ecclesiastical Nagasaki, refer to the period during which the city of Nagasaki was under foreign administration between the years 1580 and 1587. It was formally granted to the Jesuits, the Society of Jesus, as representatives of the Portuguese crown. They were seen as the highest authority in the city. After a somewhat fruitful 2-year stay in Japan, the very famous, canonized in 1904 by Pope St. Pius X and called the greatest missionary since St. Paul, who is this guy? St. Francis Xavier. After a 2-year sojourn in Japan, St. Francis Xavier, canonized in 1904 by Pope St. Pius X and called the greatest missionary since St. Paul. Pretty high praise. Leaves for China. He kind of dies inside of that great country. There's a lot of Catholic activity in what we call today the Far East.
Can I ask a really stupid question?
Sure.
When were the Jesuits banned from?
1770, something like that. Yeah, this is way before then. Yeah, the Jesuits are suppressed by, I forget the Pope's name, sometime like in the 1770s.
I think we're about that.
Yeah.
And how long did that ban last?
I'm not sure.
And what?
I never want to give you false information. Like that's my honest promise. I will sing songs in this class, make jokes, but I'll never give you, the maple syrup facts of maple syrup history to be actually Aunt Jemima level quality, the best maple syrup possible. I don't know. I'm not going to ever tell you fake fact, like, or oh, I need to know that, so I'm just going to make something up. I have no idea why they were suppressed. I think it lasted for a couple of decades, maybe into the 1800s at some point.
But they were allowed to go outside if you're.
I don't know. I don't know where the ban was affected.
Okay, sorry.
No, don't know. That's a great question. I wish I knew the answer. Believe me, I wish I knew every answer.
I just
Um,
wondered if they played out in the fact that the Jesuits were a presence in Japan.
Right. I know the Jesuits, the very famous Jesuit outpost, as talked about in the mission, is in Paraguay. And to this day, the language of Guarani is one of the official languages of Paraguay. The Jesuits, epic, taught these guys how to write their own language. They're like, you guys have this language that's oral tradition, let's make up an alphabet for you. These guys are like legendary soldiers for Christ. Very much in the mold of Ignatius of Loyola, their founder. The 26 martyrs of Japan, a group of Christians executed by crucifixion on February 5th, 1597, beatified in September of 1627 by Urban VIII and canonized as saints by Pius IX, June 8th, 1862, February 5th, 1597, 26 martyrs of Japan at Nagasaki. The blood of the martyrs is the seed of the church.
And they were crucified.
They were,
Learned this from the Catholics because they were like, oh yeah, we have great ways of torture. We didn't think of this.
oh yeah, that's awful. That's awful.
This was something that they thought was worth learning from Christian.
May God have mercy.
Yes.
With the Meiji Restoration is, in shorthand, the opening up of Japan to the world. Japanese, super patriotic. Japan's the best, everyone sucks type country. America can be that way too, France, but Japan, yeah, Japan is very much like Japan all the way. Japan's the best, period. And so they often have this like law for a while, if I'm not mistaken. And I know I have a lot of Japanese listeners of maple syrup history. Konnichiwa, guys. I'm sorry if this is incorrect. I think this is true. You have no idea how many people in Tokyo are watching right now. It's unbelievable. Like half of Tokyo is plugged in right now. It's incredible. They're trying to get me to come all the time. And I'm like, give me a reason beyond, they give me like 9, they're all good reasons, but I got to get there. Japan, before the Meiji Restoration, had like you're dead if you're a foreigner on Japanese soil rule. It's like, we're not going to play footsie with you guys. And like, hey, listen, like if you're a European guy and you're on Japanese soil, you have an arrow through your head. Like you're just not allowed on Japanese soil. Well, the Meiji Restoration opens up things to the West. Admiral Perry in the US, I don't want to get off topic, but with that, Christianity is tolerated again. Think like Roman Empire. It's no longer in this 26 martyrs persecution catacombs thing. Praise God, all these saints. Like the catacombs and persecution lions in the Colosseum is not an old thing. It's still happening in the world today, right? God have mercy. Mm-hmm. Christianity is legalized at that point. And Nagasaki actually, this is not a sarcastic comment. Nagasaki officially becomes a city, earns city status the same year Moscow does, 1889. Moscow, Idaho.
Oh, really?
1889, yeah. Dead serious, yeah, the toy series. And or maybe Moscow dates to 1887. The U of I is 1889. So that same time, Nagasaki gains like city status. How that worked, I have no idea. Like if there's a certain population or whatever. But Roman Catholicism is known from that moment. Like Nagasaki's the place. Nagasaki is like the Vatican in Japan. Nagasaki Junshin Catholic University, a private university in Nagasaki, established in 1950. It's one of the most important schools in all of Japan, schools and Catholic schools. Junsen beautifully means Immaculate Heart of Mary. So Nagasaki Immaculate Heart of Mary Catholic University, 1950.
And what's it called?
Junshin. Junshin means Immaculate Heart of Mary. So that the school is Nagasaki Junshin Catholic University, which literally means Nagasaki Immaculate Heart of Mary Catholic University. Just like, Notre Dame in South Bend, Indiana. Notre Dame is Our Lady, right? Like Our Lady's Fighting Irish.
Okay.
So last point, this article from First Things says, I got this last point from these guys, that it says things I've already told you. Nagasaki was the center of Catholicism in Japan. Its Urakami Cathedral, dedicated to the Immaculate Conception, was built in 1895 by descendants of the hidden Christians, people who for a long time were living their faith despite it being illegal. In the late 1860s, the rediscovered Haitian Christians were again rounded up, imprisoned, tortured. Authorities forcibly sought to convert them to the prevailing Shinto religion. And there's a lot of people who are dying for the faith, even on the doorstep of the Meiji Restoration. Soon, the Diocletian persecution, it's darkest before the dawn, happens right before the legalization of Christianity in Rome. Same thing here. In an attempt to demoralize this guy, Jinzaburo, the head of the Christian community in Nagasaki, they take his 14-year-old brother, strip and whip him, jab him with bamboo poles, pour ice water on him until he turns blue, and starve him for 2 weeks till he dies. So these guys, Nagasaki, praise Jesus Christ, is a Calvary of Japan, and we're getting to the most Calvary moment. It's a moment of death, but beautiful resurrection out of this suffering. The lasting influence of Catholicism may be seen in the very different character of their anniversary memorials, the mass slaughter. Hiroshima, August 6th, first bomb. Nagasaki, August 9th. Only 2 cities to ever have nukes dropped on them. Quote, Hiroshima protests, Nagasaki prays. That's like a popular saying. It's very beautiful. All right, let's talk about the bombing at Hiroshima, August 6th, 1945.
Does Shintoism recognize the emperor as divine?
Not sure. Shintoism has a lot to do. It has kind of like Confucianist, similar ancestor honoring principles. It's some relation to Buddhism, or it somehow amalgamates different Buddhist influences. I don't know more than that. I can tell you that Pseudo Alabama is a great song. It's an underrated song. Right. Someone I heard Neil sing about. I heard Neil sing about her. I heard old Neil put her down. Someone tell Mr. Young, like, they don't need him around anyhow, right? That's Sweet Home Alabama. I can tell you that, like, in China, Confucianism is more of a philosophy than a religion, where the Taoism is like this beautiful, like, logos, kind of like, like Christ is the incarnate logos. But Shintoism, Japanese religion, I'm not an expert out of respect. I don't want to give you like false facts or whatever.
Well, he does have right to think he's divine.
Yeah, the emperor certainly had it. Well, what's a good way of looking at the way the Japanese viewed the emperor? The pharaoh in Egypt, kind of thing, right?
Is there ever been any speculation as to whether these bombs would have been dropped if FDR had survived?
That I don't know.
Okay.
Speculation, I will say 100% yes. Because no, really, there's a good book. I think, yeah, well, no, yeah, I'll give you a book right now. The author's name, I believe, is Skates, Skaats, alternative to the bomb. Skates, alternative to the bomb. Let me just check that online, make sure that I'm getting the book right. Pretty sure, if my memory serves me correctly. Yeah, John Ray Skates, The Invasion of Japan, Alternative to the Bomb. I read that book. All right, so I'm going to talk to you about Hiroshima, but listen one more time. Hiroshima protests, Nagasaki prays. August 6, 1945, Hiroshima was the primary target of the first atomic bombing mission. The 393rd Bombardment Squadron B-29 Enola Gay. Enola Gay is the name of the plane that drops this bomb. It was named after pilot Paul Tibbets's mother, and piloted by Tibbets, who takes off from Northfield, Tinian, about 6 hours flight time from Japan. Enola Gay was accompanied by 2 other B-29s, the Great Artiste, commanded by Major Charles Sweeney, which carried instrumentation, and a then nameless aircraft later called Necessary Evil. Talk about poetic, like, right?
I pointed out one other time, on one of those other aircraft that flew with it was Professor Larry Johnson in the physics department.
That's crazy, really.
He died.
So U of I connection, was it the Hiroshima or Nagasaki mission,
Well, it was with the Enola Gay.
That's the first one, that's Hiroshima, yeah.
And he had been involved in that.
Well, no, thank you for that. That's very relevant info. For anyone who didn't hear that, a University of Idaho professor, where we are based, the St. Augustine's Catholic Center is on the campus of the University of Idaho, Moscow, Idaho. A U of I professor was part of this Hiroshima mission and the Manhattan Project as well. Later called Necessary Evil, commanded by Captain George Marquardt. Necessary Evil was the photography aircraft. At 8:09, Tibbets started his bomb run, handing control over to his bombardier, Major Thomas Farabee. The release at 8:15 in the morning, Hiroshima time, went as planned, and the little boy, containing about 64 kilograms of uranium-235, took 44.4 seconds to fall from the aircraft flying at about 31,000 feet to a detonation height of about 1,900 feet above the city. It blows up 2,000, doesn't hit the ground, it blows up 2,000 feet above the city. Enola Gay was 11 miles away before it felt the shock waves from the blast. Due to crosswind, the bomb missed the aiming point, the Aoi Bridge, by approximately 800 feet and detonated directly over Shima Surgical Clinic. Shima Hospital is a Japanese hospital that was obviously rebuilt. It's ground zero. That is ground zero of where this happened in the bombing in Hiroshima. It's rebuilt. I saw pictures of Shima Hospital from now. Really quickly on the output of this, it's brutal and awful, but just quick FYI. Little boy is 15 kilotons. That's the detonation power, 15 kilotons of TNT. Fat man is 22 kilotons. Mount St. Helens is 24 megatons. And the Tsar Bomba, the largest bomb ever detonated over Nova Zemlya by the Soviets, is 50 megatons, double the Mount St. Helens power. So for 1 megaton is 1,000 kilotons. So little boy, the Tsar Bomba is the largest bomb ever detonated. Look this up. It's a detonated in a test by the Soviets in '62, and it like breaks concrete and glass 2,000 miles away. The total destruction radius is insane. Despite how bad, you're gonna hear how awful and destructive Little Boy and Fat Man were, Hiroshima and Nagasaki, to kill instantly hundreds of thousands of people. Little Boy, the Hiroshima bomb, 15 kilotons. Fat Man, 22. Tsar Bomba, 50,000 kilotons. Okay? And in today's arsenal, the normal nuclear arsenal, normal weapons, 15 and 22, today the US has this thing called the Trident missile, which is 455 kilotons. And the Soviets have something called the SS, Intercontinental Ballistic Missile, which is 800 kilotons. So the weapons we have today, may God forbid, people are like, oh, World War III. Oh, look what's going on in the Gaza Strip and Israel and Ukraine and maybe Iraq. No, we do not want World War III. It's not going to be a limited war, and it's not going to be 15 kiloton weapons. It's going to be 800 kiloton weapons. It's going to be unimaginably worse. People on the ground, when this explodes in Hiroshima.
Wait, before they sent the bomb, was the Japanese government warned and
I think the people were warned too in some ways, like leaflets were sent out. Yeah. Yeah.
No one, they were ordered not to leave, or people did.
I don't know the follow-up to that. I think there's just a lot of like, they're bluffing, whatever, hold tight. What are they talking about blowing it up? We're already being firebombed. Just hold your ground. Leaflets were sent out in advance. People on the ground in Hiroshima report. Remember how I opened this class? I'm gonna read it again. This is on the Feast of the Transfiguration, August 6, 1945. After 6 days, Jesus took Peter, James, and John, his brother, and led them up a high mountain by themselves. And he was transfigured before them. His face shone like the sun, and his clothes became white as light, as no fuller on earth could bleach them. People on earth, when this bomb explodes, report a brilliant flash of light, a transfiguratory sun on the earth explosion of light, and a loud booming sound. The experiences of survivors in the city varied depending upon their location circumstances, but a common factor was a sense that a conventional weapon, sometimes cited as a magnesium bomb, which had this distinctively bright white flash, happened to go off immediately in their vicinity, causing tremendous damage, like people being thrown across the rooms, glass broken everywhere, buildings being crushed. Only after emerging from these ruins did the survivors tend to gradually understand that the entire city had in fact been attacked at the same instant, at the same immediate kind of leveling. It happened all over the city all at once. Survivor accounts frequently feature people walking through the ruins of the city without a clear sense of where to go, encountering the cries of people trapped within crushed structures or people with horrific burns. As the numerous small fires created by the blast began to grow, they merged into a firestorm that moved quickly throughout the ruins, killing many who had been trapped, causing people to jump into Hiroshima's rivers in search of sanctuary, many of whom sadly, and may we all pray forever for all these people, God rest their souls, many of whom drowned. The photographer Yoshido Masahuchi took the only photographs of Hiroshima immediately after the bombing. He described it later, quote, "Everywhere there was a dust. It made a grayish darkness over everything. It was really a terrible scene. It was just like something out of hell." Survivor accounts also talk about people who are trapped, but uninjured, but who soon succumb to radiation sickness and its attendant problems. The exact number of people killed by the blast, firestorm, and radiation are unknown, but estimates range from 66,000 up to 140,000 dead immediately, basically, right? US surveys estimate that 4.7 square miles of the city is destroyed. Japanese officials say that 69% of Hiroshima's buildings were destroyed. Over 90% of the doctors and 93% of the nurses in Hiroshima were killed or injured. Most in the downtown area, which received the greatest damage. And of course, hospitals were completely flat and ruined. After the Hiroshima bombing, Truman issued a statement announcing the use of a new weapon. He stated, quote, "We may be grateful to Providence that the German atomic bomb project had failed and that the United States and its allies had spent $2 billion on the greatest scientific gamble in history and won." Yeah, I don't know if I can agree with that at all. That's a win. You know, murdering 140,000 people. I'm not trying to implant my views. There is this debate. Was it used? We're going to talk about that. I don't know if Truman should be thanking God for, blowing up doctors, women, and children. Truman then warns Japan, quote, "If they do not now accept our terms, they may expect a rain of ruin from the air, the like of which has never been seen yet on this earth. Behind this air attack will fall sea and land forces in such numbers and power as they have not yet seen, and with the fighting skill of which they already are well aware," end quote. That could be a corrective. People are like, oh, see, Truman doesn't want to do land invasion. I mean, he seems like he does. He wants to really pound Japan into dust. To be fair, what is my opinion on Japan beyond number one? Like, I respect all cultures. I do. I'm very favorably disposed to Japanese. I love their high level of cultural pride. Japan apparently is ridiculously clean and safe. Incredibly smart cultured people, great baseball players. Last thing is not a joke. I'm serious. The greatest baseball player in the world, Shohei Ohtani, is a Japanese guy. I'm very favorable towards Japan. Japan was barbarous and just absolutely barbaric in the Second World War. They have this story when they, not just Pearl Harbor, but they capture these Australian guys and they make these nurses strip down and walk into the water and then bayonet them and shoot them with machine guns and laugh about it. They do so many war crimes. They do, and in fact, a lot of the Japanese commanders encourage the Japanese guys to do war crimes to get the allies so angry, like the Australians and Americans, that they won't stop fighting and everyone will just die. The Japanese have almost this kind of death wish, militaristic culture, and so Truman and these guys who are like, no, I'm glad we bombed Japan. I understand that. I'm not all the Japanese were doing nothing; they're just minding their own business. No, look what they did to the Chinese in the 30s. I again, who am very favorable towards the Japanese, they were some of the most barbaric war crime perpetrators during this time, 100%. It's still should we be thanking God for incinerating a city with an atomic bomb? I don't think so. Two wrongs don't make a right. Perhaps is the cliche you want at this moment. Nagasaki, August 9th, 1945, 3 days later. In addition to being the city of a very strong Catholic character, the Vatican in Japan, if you'd like, the city of Nagasaki had been one of the largest seaports in southern Japan and was of great wartime importance. Its wide-ranging industrial activity, production of ordnance, ships, military equipment. The four largest companies in the city were Mitsubishi Shipyards, electrical shipyards, arms plant, and steel and arms works, which employed about 90% of the city's labor force. On the second, yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was I've told you this before, but some of the, it was not only the rape of Nanking, but during World War II, these guys, our troops on the island, when they saw this is a friend of mine who was there, said that after they saw some of the atrocities, and a bunch of them gave up, they just set up their machine guns and mowed them down.
Yeah, the Pacific Theater was double hell on earth. I mean, it just was absolutely awful. So how dare I sit here from my comfortable chair drinking coffee? Oh, it was awful. It was awful on all sides in so many ways. And these stories are one of a million, exactly. A shout out to the podcaster, Dan Carlin. If you haven't heard of Dan Carlin, now you have. He does a podcast called Hardcore History. I highly recommend it. Dan Carlin, Hardcore History. Dan Carlin, his education, he has a bachelor's degree in history from Colorado, and he proves so beautifully, I think. You don't have to be a doctorate. You don't have to to do good history. You have to be interested in do good research, and he does, and he's great. I hate the kind of academic arrogance. Oh, he's not a PhD. Like, he's better than most professors, I think. He's great. He has an awesome thing on the Japanese called Supernova in the East. Might be like 40 hours on the Japanese starting in the wake of World War I and really focusing on World War II, Singapore, Midway, obviously Pearl Harbor, all the way, Iwo Jima, all the way up to the atomic bombs. And Dan Carlin talks about, these stories of Japanese atrocities in the Second World War are like raindrops in a rainstorm. I mean, it's like they become famous for this. And a lot of these Japanese guys like this because we're going to have this kind of fearsome reputation and whatever. So a lot of people wanted to drop atomic bombs on Japan. Japan probably would admit to themselves, we probably want to nuke ourselves too. But still, all that aside, what is the Christian called to do? And just war theory, we're going to talk about what some of the Catholics have said about this. That doesn't mean you can blow up hospitals with nukes, right? Anyways, continuing with the story of Nagasaki. Paul Tibbets was the captain of the Enola Gay, Little Boy. Kermit King Behan, Beahan, is one of the key people in the Nagasaki bombing. He was a career officer in the U.S. Air Force, a bombardier on the crew flying Boeing V-29 Super Fortress Boxcar. Boxcar is the plane that drops Fat Man. And on his 27th birthday, August 9th, 1945, he's the guy who gets this done. How does it happen? Well, at 11:01 Japanese time, by the way, BM had a reputation like that he could hit like a target from 30,000 feet that was like as large as a quarter. He was like an expert bomber. Imagine like a sniper for bombing, whatever you want to use, like the ace, kind of eagle eye guy. At 11:01 Japanese time, a last minute break in the clouds over Nagasaki allowed Boxcar's bombardier, Captain Kermit Behan, to visually sight the target as ordered. The Fat Man weapon, containing a core of about 11 pounds of plutonium, was dropped over the city's industrial valley. It exploded 47 seconds later above a tennis court, halfway between the Mitsubishi Steel and Arms Works in the south and Nagasaki Arsenal in the north. This was nearly 1.9 miles northwest of the planned hypocenter. The resulting explosion released the equivalent energy of 22 kilotons of TNT, as we said earlier. It was detonated in Urakami, only 1,640 feet from the cathedral, which was obviously completely destroyed. The Catholic Cathedral in Nagasaki was completely destroyed. As the Feast of the Assumption of Mary was near, indeed, so August 9th, so less than a week away, Mass was held on that day and well attended. The resultant collapse and heat waves cindered and buried all those present in the cathedral. The destruction of the cathedral hit the religious community of Nagasaki the hardest. This is a very old story. Nagasaki, 27 martyrs of Japan, the guy being tortured to death with ice water and bamboo rods. Nagasaki, very much living Christ's Via Dolorosa. It had such an impact that noted playwright Tanaka Chikao wrote his most successful play, Head of Mary, about the efforts of Christians in Nagasaki to reconstitute their faith by rebuilding the Virgin Mary. I'm not sure what that play is about, and I wish I would have looked it up. I think I can almost imagine like reconstructing a statue or like, everything is blown it up, put the statue back together as a symbol of like out of honor for Our Lady, as a symbol of like, that's the last mystery, the fruit of the last mystery of the coronation of Mary, the grace of perseverance. I imagine the play something like that. But again, I'm not 100% sure. The radius of total destruction followed by fires across the northern portion of the city to the south of the bomb, although the bomb was more powerful than the one used in Hiroshima, it was 22 kilotons versus 15, 7 kilotons, 7,000 tons more of TNT. It's a lot. It actually does less damage in some ways because where it hits in this Urakami Valley, there's mountains. It's not like in dead center Hiroshima. Of the 7,500 Japanese employees who worked at Mitsubishi, 6,200 were instantly killed. Some 17 to 22,000 others who worked in other work plants and factories died as well. Casualty estimates range from as low as 22 to as high as 75,000 people. 22 to 75,000 people. The highest number I've seen for total casualties on these two bombs that dropped for 40 seconds and for 1 minute and 30 seconds of action, 250,000 dead, 226,000 people from these two explosions combined. That's not even counting all the kind of PTSD, the lifelong scarring, the everything. All right, so reactions. Well, okay. Paul Tibbets, he says he has no regrets. We're going to talk first about immediate reaction. We're going to save the best for last, these stories of these two miracles that happened in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And yes, I intentionally call them miracles. You can decide if you want to agree with that term or just, wow, that was lucky, whatever it may be. But
Can I just point out a couple of
Yeah.
things? So the Japanese population at that point was 71 million during World War II. The biggest cities had over 5 million.
yeah,
So the target cities were actually intended to be small target cities.
yeah, it's not dropped on Tokyo.
Right, and they have been strategically targeted cities, but they were smaller cities. Many Japanese children were evacuated to the countryside, just like they've done in other countries. So, just not to defend the bombing.
No, that's important information. Yeah.
But as far as trying to
Mitigate.
Yeah.
trying to terrify a fearsome opponent and do it with as little collateral damages.
We're going to do this, but let's mitigate it less collateral damage as possible. Get the women and children out, drop pamphlets, don't do the largest city. Fine. Okay. No, that's not, I mean, that's still not good, but that's better. That's better than just drop it on all, get the, Tokyo and don't tell anyone. Yeah. 100%. Paul Tibbets, the pilot of the Enola Gay, no regrets. I knew when I got the assignment, it was going to be an emotional thing. We had feelings. We had to put them in the background. We knew it was going to kill people right and left. My one driving interest was to do the best job I could so we could end the killing as quickly as possible. And on the 60th anniversary, August 6th, 2005, they asked him, like, do you have any regrets? He's like, no. And he's like, the guys who appreciate that I saved them, they're mostly dead now. He's like, yeah, I get a lot of hate now, perhaps from all these, modern people who are like, how dare you, how dare you? He's like, look, he definitely takes the thesis like it was a necessary, as the one play is called, necessary evil. Paul Tibbets' first reaction, no regrets. Oppenheimer, Trinity test guy, when the bomb blows up, he famously says, one of the famous things he says, it worked. Wow, like it's crazy. And he recites this thing from the Bhagavad Gita, and he's just like, kind of in awe. But only 11 days after the bombing of Hiroshima, August 1745, he expresses in writing to the US government his desire for nuclear weapons to be banned. And when he becomes president, as the president of the General Advisory Committee of the US Atomic Energy Commission, he is already, if not an out-and-out anti-nuke activist, he certainly has come to some position like that. J. Robert Oppenheimer, the architect of the atomic bomb Manhattan Project, is like, what have we done? So much so that people started accusing him of being a communist. He has to testify before the McCarthy Commission. His security privileges, speaking of earlier, are revoked. Okay. Andrei Sakharov, Russian atomic nuclear scientist who's very involved in the Tsar Bomba, that 50 megaton bomb. He too, in 1973 or 1975, wins the Nobel Peace Prize. The Norwegian Nobel Committee calls him a spokesperson for the conscience of mankind. In a convincing manner, Sakharov has emphasized that man's inviolable rights provide the only safe foundation for genuine and enduring international cooperation. Sakharov, in a very typical story, is the guy who's involved in making things go boom, big boom. And then he's like, I have seen firsthand the destruction. Let's disarm, nuclear disarmament. Sakharov, there's a prize named for him today for like political dissidents in the world, the Sakharov Prize. Reaction number 4, skipping to like super modernity, even though I have like 10 total before I get to the miracles. Pope Francis calls replacing the church's opposition to nuclear weapons in the catechism. Quote, the use of nuclear weapons is immoral. It must be added to the catechism of the Catholic Church. And after visiting Hiroshima, Francis says, quote, a true human catechesis on cruelty. That's what this is. There's an article, next reaction from Joe Heschmeyer. I don't know if you know this guy, but he's kind of Catholic guy, writes for Catholic Answers. Trent Horn, Patrick Coffin used to be part of that. Hershmeyer says there is this principle of double effect in Catholic moral theology. The FDA might approve a drug that helps most people but just hurts a few. Well, is it still listed? It could be. The problem is, what if you intentionally are doing something that's going to harm someone? Then it can't be listed. So that's what John Paul says. Choices cannot be redeemed by the goodness of any intention or any consequence. They are irrevocably opposed to the bond between persons. Quote, Hirschmeyer says, intentionally murdering 200,000 men, women, and children is inherently immoral, even if you are doing so to try to end a world war. John the 23rd writes in Pacem in Terris, quote, nuclear weapons must be banned. Second Vatican Council. Any act of war aimed indiscriminately at the destruction of entire cities of extensive areas along with their population is a crime against God and man himself. It merits unequivocal and unhesitating condemnation. Now, Hirschmeyer comes back to who's the biographer of John Paul II? Anyone know? George Weigel. George Weigel wrote that very big, thick book, A Witness to Hope, about John Paul. Weigel writes an article in 2020 for First Thing saying it was good. Weigel proceeds by saying that the militaristic nationalistic fanatics who dominated Japanese policy until Emperor Hirohito's decisive intervention in August of 45 planned to turn the entire Japanese population to combatants during an American invasion. And so Truman has three options, Weigel says. He could increase the firebombing of Japanese cities, strangle Japan by naval blockade, which would cause millions, tens of millions of deaths from, lack of access to food and supplies, or three, use the atomic weapons developed by the Manhattan Project. But Hirschmeyer doesn't buy, this is a classic argument that was in favor of Truman. It was actually an act of mercy. It wasn't the largest cities. It killed less, but it's a lesser evil. It's a necessary evil, like the atomic bomb plane, tailplane was called. The only other options were much, much more deaths. And not even pure nationalism. I don't want American boys to die. Amen, indeed. Like everyone. Well, Hirschmeyer says, Weigel's core argument that in murdering roughly 200,000 civilians, Truman, quote, saved millions, even tens of millions of lives, American and Japanese, is not morally defensible. And St. Paul himself has said, why not do evil that good may come? As some people slanderously charge us with saying, their condemnation is just. You cannot do evil to do good. It is not the principle of double effect if you're literally blowing up a city from the sky. I have no magisterial authority. Duh. I'm not saying you may not take the argument that it was illicit. There is some priest who did a video online while it was the right decision, and it squares the moral theology. I'm not a moral theologian. I will confess, yeah, I'm definitely 95% to 5. Like, it was a bad idea. I'm not, this is just, the act is so awful itself, but I'm not trying to speak definitively in any way. If you're a Catholic, you must ban nuclear. No, I don't have the authority to say that. And I think there's actually an argument. I don't like the use of nuclear weapons, but the act of having nuclear weapons might serve peace. If everyone has them, no one's dumb enough to use them. That's kind of deterrent. So if we just ban them and only the bad guys have these nukes, that could be very bad. So that's a way stronger argument that I'm more willing to get behind than just like, it was good that we actually did this. I don't think it was good. Yeah.
What about Iran? They might be dumb enough.
I don't think so. I don't think they would. I really don't. First of all, this is a good topic. It really is. It's off topic for today, but I'm not saying I don't want to talk about Iran and Israel for any reason. Just we have so much here today, but that is a good topic. No, I don't think, and again, I'm an idiot, but I don't think Iran would use nuclear weapons. I don't think anyone is stupid enough to do that. Like Iran doing that, or the Israelis have something called the Samson option. Have you guys heard of this? Samson option is if Israel is ever threatened in a way that would be like another Holocaust, they're going to nuke everybody. Like, we're not going to allow that to happen. We'll press every button. So people say the Israelis will use nukes, maybe Russia will use them in Ukraine. No, Iran's going to do them. I don't think anyone's going to do them. I want to say for the record, and blessed are the peacemakers. They will be called children of God. I think no one wants to do that. And to your point, I like your language very much. I don't think literally anyone's, that's the right word, dumb enough to do it. There's a great graphic from Princeton University. What would happen with a nuclear war? What would happen? In fact, I'm just see if I can get this video now. I'll play it for you guys at the end of class. Princeton News, like 4 minutes long. It's worth the look. I already found it.
Yeah.
I found it. I won't play it on my YouTube channel, guys. Is blowing up 6 gutrillion. I don't know what that means, but 6 gutrillion views. That sounds pretty good. I don't think I'm allowed to attach other people's videos to my video and post it on my channel. So I'll play it for us after the Zoom stream is gone. Anyone who wants to watch the simulation is called Plan A. Plan A is 4 minutes and 19 seconds long. YouTube God, okay, let me see. Okay. Guys, I don't know what happened. I started talking about like top secret nuke stuff and the Zoom went out. So we were recording the earlier thing. So either what I'm going to say now is totally pointless because the Zoom stream was not dropped. We're still recording. Or you're watching part 2 of the August 6th, August 9th Hiroshima, Nagasaki maple syrup history. If it's part 2, lucky for me, I get to add more videos to my YouTube channel. If it's just one, that's fine. But anyways, we're back online, I think. Pope Pius XII points out in February of 1948. And in fact, guys, what am I even saying? I have iMovie. I'm just going to download these 2 clips and clip them together. Done. Problem solved. So not 2 parts. Pope Pius XII points out February 1948 is the most terrible weapon the human mind has ever conceived. 1 year later, February 1981, Pope John Paul II says, quote, our future on this planet, exposed as it is to nuclear annihilation, depends upon one single factor. Humanity must make a moral about face. And then Benedict XVI, May 2010, quote, progress towards a collaborative and secure nuclear disarmament is closely connected with the full and rapid fulfillment of the relevant international commitments. Peace, in fact, rests on trust and on respect for assumed obligations, not only on the balance of power. Okay. Some church reactions. Now let's talk about the miracle stuff in the last 10 minutes or something. This article initially comes from Britain Needs Fatima, issue 25, February 2007. So at the center of this destructive place, there are these Jesuits known as the Hiroshima 8. Remember, this drops in this medical center, the fat boy bomb, or no, the little boy bomb. Little boy is Hiroshima, fat man is Nagasaki. These guys, these 8 Jesuits, survived an explosion that instantly killed 86% of people in an 8-block radius. While some of them lived into old age, many of the Jesuits were affected by radiation and had various health complications, but they weren't blown up from the thing they should have got blown up with. And we're going to talk about that in a second. The main character here, this guy who actually, as far as I know, doesn't have health problems for the rest of his life, but survives kind of totally unscathed at the shocking, of doctors. This guy his name is Father Hubert Friedrich Heinrich Schiffer. Hubert Friedrich Heinrich Schiffer. That's better, right? I don't get people to do that. Like, if I'm just in the middle of an English sentence and be like, yeah, my friend Alejandro Hernandez Rodriguez said this. I'm not gonna be like, as my friend Alejandra Hernandez Rodriguez. Like, that's so gross when people do that. It's like, just speak normal. Speaking normal. Like, don't. So Hubert Friedrich Heinrich Schiffer, Father Schiffer, was a German Jesuit, survived the dropping of Little Boy on Hiroshima. Many retellings of the event state there were 8 priests or missionaries, 8 blocks from ground zero. And these people are well within the most deadly 1-mile radius. Schiffer also notes the name of the church was the Jesuit Church for Our Lady's Assumption. According to the 1946 account of one of these survivors, Father John Seames, who had been on the outskirts of the city, they were in their rooms at Parish House. It was 8:15, exactly the time when we heard the explosion. When came, remember, Transfiguration, when came the intense light, and immediately thereafter the sound of breaking windows, walls, and furniture, and they were showered with glass splinters and fragments of wreckage. Father Schiffer was buried beneath a portion of a wall and suffered a severe head injury. The Father Superior received most of the splinters in his back and lower extremity, from which he bled copiously. Everything was thrown about in rooms themselves, but the wooden framework of the house remained intact. And Schiffer's own account is that he had just celebrated Mass on this feast of the Transfiguration, sat down to eat breakfast, when, as he plunged his spoon into a freshly sliced grapefruit, there was a bright flash of light. His first thought was that a fuel tanker had exploded, but suddenly a terrible explosion filled the air. With one bursting thunderstroke, an invisible force lifted me from the chair, hurled me through the air, shook me, battered me, whirled me round and round like a leaf in a gust of autumn wind. End quote. Next thing he remembers is opening his eyes, finding himself on the ground, looking around, seeing nothing left in any direction. The railroad station, buildings, everything as far as eyes can see gone, but their own space. And despite all this, the only harm was a few slight cuts in the back of his neck from shards of glass. As far as he could tell, there was nothing else physically wrong with him. There were some other people that survived close to ground zero, but it's very, 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 very few and far between. What do these guys say about this? Well, if it's true indeed, that's not
Sorry.
no problem at all. Again, hearing Sweet Home Alabama before that was epic. Thank you for that.
Well, this is David's fine.
There you go. Good. If it's unexplainable by scientific means, perhaps there is a supernatural reason. These guys believe that. They are ardent enthusiasts of the message of Fatima. What is the message of Fatima? We talked about this in previous Maple History. The Blessed Mother comes to these shepherd children during the First World War, pray and do penance, pray the rosary daily, stop offending God. That metanoia of the gospel, repent, turn, very simple, classic 101 stuff. All legitimate, real Marian apparitions are always simple. They're not crazy new stuff. They're do penance and pray. And they live this message. So after once more, kind of starting, this is what I read when I read a quote from the Bible about transfiguration. The third time I'm reading this, the Jesuits who survived so close to ground zero in Hiroshima say, we believed we survived because we were living the message of Fatima. We lived and prayed the rosary daily in that house. And Father Schiffer himself felt that he had received a protective shield from the Blessed Virgin Mary. In that house, the Holy Rosary was recited together every day. He in fact, in a very strong declaration of humility, he was like, I'm not going to call this a miracle, perhaps. That's God's business. If it's miraculous, I do believe it's from this devotion to the Blessed Virgin Mary. Dr. Stephen Reinhardt of the U.S. Department of Defense, a widely recognized international expert in the field of atomic blast, says a quick calculation says that at 1 kilometer, the bulk temperature was in excess of 20 to 30,000 degrees Fahrenheit. And the blast wave would have hit at sonic velocity with pressures on buildings greater than 600 psi. If the Jesuits at 1 kilometer from the geometric epicenter were outside the atomic bomb's plasma, their residence should have been utterly destroyed. This is 600 psi. At 10 psi, a human being will experience severe lung and heart damage, burst eardrums. At 20 psi, limbs are blown off. So at 20 psi, your limbs explode from your body. What is 600 psi like? Do I have to comment further? And all cotton clothing would be on fire at 350 degrees Fahrenheit. And your lungs totally inoperative at 350 degrees. This is 30,000 degrees. So, okay, not scientifically explainable. No way could any human have survived, or should anything have been left standing at 1 kilometer. At 10 times the distance, I saw the brick wall standing from elementary school, and there were a few badly burned survivors, all died within 15 years of some form of cancer. God rest their souls. Everything is blown apart way beyond this. This building remains standing. These guys survive. Quote, the department, this is a hilarious, very laconic quote. The Department of Defense never commented officially on this, and I expect it was classified. I think it's possible the Jesuits were told not to say anything either. So, all right, what about Nagasaki quickly? A real quick thing. One of these guys, Lewis, co-pilot Robert A. Lewis, was part of this mission, meets Schiffer, and they become, quote, according to the priest, very fast friends. Talk about a crazy story. Hey, old boy, here's another pint. Remember that time you dropped a bomb on us? I'm like, he's like, Lewis is one of these guys, but this is a very typical story. Like 1913, reunion of Confederates and Union soldiers at Gettysburg. Like, we all went through this together, burying the hatchet. Nagasaki has a very strong connection to Saint Maximilian Kolbe. He is a guy who famously dies at the Nazi concentration camp, the most famous one of Auschwitz. Very beautiful story. He's prisoners have escaped. Kolbe is selected to die. Well, actually, excuse me. 10 people are expected to die. Collective punishment with the Nazis for the person escaping. And one of these guys, Franciszek Gujanovnik, cries out, "My wife, my children." Kolbe dies in his place. What an epic, epic boss. By the way, if you've seen pictures of Kolbe, he looks like a stud. Like people say he's like diminutive. He looks like he's like has a neck as thick as like an interstate highway. He looks like jacked out of his mind. Like he looks like just like a legit warrior for Christ. Like he looks like he would just like Saint Sebastian style, like shoot me with arrows. You can't hurt me. Like Kolbe looks like an absolute baller in photos. And here's like the spiritual strength of this guy. God bless him. There's a reason why John Paul II calls him like the patron saint of the 20th century, a martyr of love, a true martyr.
He also said masses, although he was strictly forbidden.
He's an absolute legend. Kolbe dies in place of this guy, Franciszek Gujanovnik, and so what? That's a nice thing, but Gujanovnik is killed by the Nazis, right? No. This guy, my wife, my children, goes back to see his wife and children, is there when for years and years, he dies as an old man. Very beautiful story. Even if that guy would be executed the next day, it still was a beautiful story of Kolbe dying in his place. Kolbe is so baller, the Nazis eventually have to inject him with carbolic acid because he won't die. He's like indestructible. Who was this guy? Well, Kolbe was born January 8th, 1894. He was seen as kind of a mischievous child, but that part of the biography always gets me the most upset. It's like, that's so stupid. People, this saint, when she was young, it's like, you guys are just saying that. It's like, look, they became this great saint, and every kid misbehaves. So whatever. Let's just like X that, whatever. But he does have this, he apparently has this vision of the Blessed Virgin Mary after he had been scolded by his mother, and he goes and like asks the prayer, like, what should I do with my life? I asked the Blessed Mother of God what was to become of me. Then she came to me holding 2 crowns, one white, one red. She asked me if I was willing to accept either of these crowns. The white one meant I should preserve impurity. The red that I should become a martyr. I said I would accept them both. He joins the Conventual Franciscans, taking the name Maximilian in 1910. And upon taking final vows, as the First World War breaks out in 1914, he adds the name Maria because of his deep devotion to the Virgin Mary. Maximilian Kolbe had an awesome YouTube channel. I'm not being sarcastic at all. What is YouTube and social media back then? Print journalism. He founds this thing called the Militia Immaculata, the Army of the Immaculate One. It publishes informative devotional pamphlets, a daily newspaper, monthly magazine. The latter has circulations of these newspaper and magazine has circulations of 230,000 over 1 million, respectively. This guy's awesome at he'd be great on YouTube and Twitter. I'm not being sarcastic at all, just getting the word out that way. He returns to Poland in 1936, from where? Japan, from Nagasaki. Maximilian Kolbe builds this thing called the Garden of the Immaculata Mission House. This Franciscan mission house after arriving in Japan in 1930. He quickly becomes known as, quote, the madman of the Immaculata. He's this guy who's like St. Francis of Assisi, who's like live wire crazy for God. Like, I'm going to go imitate Christ to the max. While he's in Japan, Maximilian Kolbe, 1930, he's 100,000, 50,000 copies of different magazines. He's going all out. What is the import of this? Well, in addition to bolstering this beautiful Catholic community in Nagasaki and inspiring many different people, some of them as diverse as someone who's considered the greatest living Japanese novelist, Sono Ayoko. She's still alive, she's 92, who wrote a book in 1973, a novel called Miracles, or Kiseki in Japanese. It talks about a person going in search of Maximilian Kolbe and his message and all that. And she herself, I believe, is a Catholic as well. I know she went to the school of Sacred Heart as a young girl. But Kolbe, in addition to building up the faith in Nagasaki, he builds this monastery. It survives the bombing because it's a coincidence, or it's not. I don't know. God be praised. Does God still do miracles every single day? Do I want to be like that person who's like, oh, I know about this miracle? That's God's business.
I'm sorry, that was what did he build?
He built a monastery, a Franciscan monastery, becomes known as the Garden of the Immaculata, this kind of mission house. It survives the atomic bombing. Most other buildings in this area, even at 3 times the distance, very similar to what happened in Hiroshima with Father Schiffer, are completely leveled, but nothing else happens at the monastery Kolbe is associated with beyond a few broken glass panes. It still remains standing. It's kind of a living symbol. What is the connection? That maybe amidst all the kind of horror, and there is certainly horror of 250,000 people in mere seconds being vaporized by 30,000 degree temperatures, God still sends things as a sign and loves his blessed mother, Our Lady, so much that those who are devoted to her and living this message of Fatima might yet find refuge even in the midst of this awful storm. Which leads me to the final thing I want to talk about, Our Lady of Akita. These are apparitions, 1973, by Sister Agnes Katsuko Sasagawa. Marian apparitions, I submit to Jesus Christ. The church has said officially, Fatima, absolutely, legit. Lourdes, legit. Guadalupe, legit. I don't know if you know, Medjugorje, not pronounced on. That is the truth. I know a lot of people who love Medjugorje. The church is not approved. I'm not saying it's false. There are people online that say Medjugorje is a false apparition, but I say I love being Catholic in response to that. I'll wait for the church to decide. But like Medjugorje, just do not make that mistake. I know a lot of people who are very strong aficionados of Medjugorje saying I experienced a lot of healing there. And I'm okay, praise God. Medjugorje is not on the same level as like the stamped and approved Fatima, Lourdes, Guadalupe. I'm not sure where Akita is in this whole thing. I actually know. I have the thing here. It's always up to the local ordinary, right? The bishop to decide. So amen. Again, praise God for being Catholic, this magisterial authority. We don't just make it up as we go. Well, I like this one or I don't. The bishop of Niigata, John Shohiro Ito, recognized, quote, the supernatural character of a series of mysterious events concerning the statue of the Holy Mother Mary, and authorizes the veneration of the Holy Mother of Akita within the Roman Catholic Diocese of Niigata in a 1984 pastoral letter. So approved by local, but perhaps not as famous as other ones. What is this miracle at Akita? There's a statue, this wooden statue of Our Lady that weeps. The Japanese, who FYI, right? How many Catholics are there in Japan? Like one Catholic, right? You know, for the population, it's like less than 1%. Like Nagasaki and little pockets. Like Japan is not a Catholic country. And yet the whole news broadcasts, it's like on their, you know, CNN, Fox, because it's just so wow, you know, yeah.
Wow.
Sasagawa claims to have received 3 messages. So here's what she says. This sister, remember, Sister Agnes Katsuko Sasagawa, and I believe there's often healings associated with the supernatural events. She regains her hearing after a long period of deafness. Sister Agnes Katsuko Sasagawa is this Catholic nun who receives these messages from Our Lady. She said the Virgin statue became illuminated as it acknowledged her stigmata and hearing impairment. She was then instructed to recite the prayer of the handmaids of the Eucharist, which the Virgin Mary said would cure her deafness. The other reported messages asking for more praying of the rosary and acts of reparation. That's always a good sign with Marian apparitions when it's like Our Lady says, pray the rosary and do penance. That's what they're all about. Like Fatima is so interesting, but all the sensationalist atheists are like, oh, that's great. Thank God they're interested in me. That brings me to faith. Like there's not secret, like weird stuff. It's do the rosary. It's repent. You're a sinner. Accept Jesus Christ. That's always the message, right? The second message, quote, includes the following. Many men in this world afflict the Lord. I desire souls to console him, to soften the anger of the Heavenly Father. I wish with my son for souls who will repair by their suffering and their poverty for sinners and ingrates. It's also very much a Fatima. Many souls go to hell. People don't do penance for them. Pray for people. For those 9 atheist cousins you have or whatever, do pray for them. They're not praying for themselves, so help them, right? Helping them, you help yourself too. To whom more is given, more is expected. Third message is most kind of harrowing. I'm going to finish the class on this. I don't know if you're aware of the kind of controversy surrounding the third secret of Fatima. I don't know if you guys are aware. 3 secrets of Fatima. The Vatican apparently released the last one in the summer of 2000. A lot of people say they didn't release the whole version. I don't know. Exactly. I'm exactly like you. I wasn't there. I'm an idiot. I'm not going to like, oh, yeah. But a lot of people say that it wasn't all released. It's too shocking and it deals with kind of end time stuff and nuclear war. Our Lady of Fatima, if you like the sensationalist stuff, I mean, she says that at Fatima, children, if people don't stop offending God, there's going to be a worse war. And there is, Second World War. And there's going to be a great sign in the sky. And there was, the Aurora Borealis in the 1930s. This should give you kind of like chills. Okay, I better get to praying. If we don't stop offending God, you know, what might happen? So here's what happens here. Third message. Contents of third message were, once more, this is October 13th. That date matters. October 13th is the miracle of the sun at Fatima. October 13th, 1973. So 56 years, the date of the miracle of the sun, Our Lady tells Sister Agnes Katsuko Sasagawa, quote, "My dear daughter, listen well to what I have to say to you. As I told you, if men do not repent and better themselves, the Father will inflict a terrible punishment on all of humanity. The good as well as the bad, sparing neither priest nor faithful. The survivors will find themselves so desolate they will envy the dead. Each day, recite the prayer of the Rosary. With the Rosary, pray for the Pope, bishops, and priests. The work of the devil will infiltrate even into the church in such a way that one will see cardinals opposing cardinals and bishops against other bishops. The priests who venerate me will be scorned and opposed by their confreres. Churches and altars sacked, the church will be full of those who accept compromises, and the demon will press many priests and consecrated souls to leave the service of the Lord. The demon will be especially implacable against souls consecrated to God. The thought of the loss of so many souls is the cause of my sadness. If sins increase in number and gravity, there will no longer be pardon for them. With courage, speak to your superior. Is it Bishop Ito who directs your community? It is Bishop Ito who directs your community. You have still something to ask. Today is the last time I'll speak to you in a living voice. From now on, you obey the one sent to you and your superior. Superior, I alone am able to save you still from the calamities that approach." Okay, so many times, the message of all these approved apparitions is God sends his mother. Why? Because he loves his mama, like all good boys do. Fourth commandment, and she's the queen of heaven and earth, and she's not some just bit player, whatever. She's the queen of heaven and earth. Perfect only because of Christ. Amen to the Protestants who are like, Christ alone is perfect. Indeed, but her immaculate conception, her perfection is by him in anticipation of his work on the cross. And so he sends her often because he loves her to tell people to turn to him. And if people don't, there'll be bad stuff to happen. That's obvious. So anyways, may we continue to pray. God have mercy on us and on the world. See you guys.
There's an